And he is the political strategist for Measure F, which is the opposing pot measure that's on the ballot. And it's a pleasure to welcome to the show Gary South. Gary, how are you?
Hi, Doug. How are you?
A-OK. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Always good to be with you.
Well, we're confused on this because, we've got these three different ballot measures, D, F, and E. And E, actually, its proponents bailed on it. So they bailed on their own ballot measure, which pretty much leaves us with D and F. Do I have that right?
That's correct. E is really irrelevant. It was put on the ballot by a major union, and they abandoned their own measure when D went on the ballot, put on by the city council, and they're now the main supporter of D. They're providing all the money and the manpower for yes on D. So it's really between D and F. That's the choice.
Now, let me ask you about this, because D is backed by both Gruhl and Garcetti are both backing D, and the city council, as you said, put that on. But it seems to me that if you vote for D, we're creating 135 very rich people. We're creating a monopoly for 135 dispensaries that happen to be grandfathered in because they got their paperwork in, and it is easy widers, but they got their paperwork in like within the first period of time when they first created these things.
Well, you're exactly right, Doug, and that's partly why D is such a fraud. I mean, first of all, it refers in the measure to 135 dispensaries that were registered with the city as of September of 2007 as being the only dispensaries in the city of L.A. that will be allowed to stay open. However, if you read the fine print in D, it is very clear that we're going to end up with far fewer than 135 dispensaries, because many of those dispensaries who, in fact, registered with the city in 2007 do not meet other requirements in Measure D. So what you're going to end up with D is a monopoly of about 30 or 40 dispensaries in the city of L.A. This is a city, by the way, of 4 million people that covers about 500 square miles, where there are at least 100,000 medical marijuana patients who have doctor's prescriptions. And we've seen what happens when you reduce the number of dispensaries to just a small handful, because this has happened in Oakland. And what happens with the remaining dispensaries is, as you very accurately stated, not only do they end up with an economic monopoly on medical marijuana, which is legal under state law, but they become pot superstores. And you have major neighborhood impacts when you have that few dispensaries in a city, a large city, because you have tens of thousands of patients who usually weekly go to a dispensary to get their medical marijuana, and it causes huge impacts in the neighborhood in which these things sit. So, and in addition, there is no rational reason whatsoever why a dispensary that was open and registered with the city in September of 2007 should be grandfathered in or favored or handed a monopoly under any of these measures. Some of these early dispensaries were rogue operations, operated out of the back alley, and the ones that have opened since, in many cases, are actually very highly professionalized operations.
So why does it have so much support from prominent people? Why is the city council and the two principal candidates for mayor, why are they backing this?
Well, if you look at the actions of the L.A. City Council, which has fumbled and bumbled the issue of medical marijuana for going on now 7 years, it is clear that the real intent of the City Council is to ban all dispensaries in L.A. In fact, they just voted to do that unanimously a few months ago. And if you look at the provisions of D and you look at the actual effect of D, if voters choose to pass it today, the actual fact is it will constitute an ultimate ban, an eventual ban on all dispensaries in the city of L.A.
Now, and real quick, Gary, let me jump in because we're very short on time. We're coming up on the network news. My house, I live in the West Valley, and when it was unregulated and it was a Wild West, we had like 35 of these places within a 5-mile radius of my house. So, I mean, that's not good either.
I agree with you.
So what do we do?
Either D or F, trust me, will reduce the number of dispensaries in L.A. substantially. Either of them will. Both of them will. The difference is D does not do what it claims it's going to do, which is protect access to medical marijuana for those very ill patients who
have legitimate needs. All right. Well, listen, I mean, that's how I kind of see it. I don't like the idea of creating monopolies, period. So I'm inclined to vote for F. But I appreciate your explaining it to us. We'll talk to you down the road, Gary. Thanks for coming on. Gary South, Political Strategy.